Good morning. I'm Ben Franklin, sitting in for Carol, and we are very fortunate today to have Bonnie Holcomb and Elizabeth St. John to help us look at the time-honored Advent tradition at Bradley Hills with a faith perspective that is appropriate to our times and to offer an alternative giving as a way to respond to the changes of 2025. So that making these donations is a conscious act of planting seeds to rebuild the justice that has been lost. So let's have a word of prayer before we turn it over to Bonnie and Elizabeth. Loving God, we thank you for this opportunity to join together and consider ways that we might be of service to your wishes. We have been blessed in so many ways, and grant us the wisdom and guidance and generosity to help in our troubled world. Thank you for Bonnie and Elizabeth and their important work in leading our church's charitable mission. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So good morning, everyone. This morning, we're especially pleased to have a chance to share with you who are here in the room, on the Zoom, and those who will watch later. Hopefully new members, people who are thinking of joining us, Carol, who's now traveling, and others, to share the perspective that we have in building and making the alternative giving available this year. This program started in the mid-1990s, first with the opportunity to give scholarships for a special school for kids in Palestine, and is developed into a program beloved by some in the congregation and beyond to generate and nurture projects. It was set up to support justice in specific intentional ways that have the potential to make a measurable difference in people's opportunities by addressing specific inequities. And for us, it's been spiritual work. And for many who have joined and are part of these projects. It's particularly compelling in light of changes that are taking place in America under the current administration. For many members in this church, not all, and for citizens at large, this feels like the end of a period of stability. It feels like we're at the precipice of a change, and it's not one that's particularly welcome. This familiar structures are flailing and failing, and it feels increasingly scary and threatening. In presenting this program, we invite you to look not only into geographical spread, but also political and historical context, as we try to understand what our responsibilities are as conditions change nationally and globally. We need to realize that our perspective is affected by the fact that most of us have been living in abundance in this era and in this country because of the sacrifices of our forebears. In my case, it was my immediate forebears. For example, I'm a baby boomer born out of a generation of people who went to war and a generation in Europe that saw millions die in war and sent to gas chambers. This resulted in creating an enormous demand for the kinds of democracy and rights and justice supporting institutions that were built up after that. We felt some responsibility for honoring and protecting them, but also relaxed into the security and abundance that they provided us. Those institutions created and reinforced by that sacrifice are now under direct attack and in some cases crumbling. So we need to think, what are we investing in? This discussion of alternative giving provides the opportunity for that reflection. We have opportunities to make things grow that will support our morals and values of equality and convey our own commitment to human dignity and rights and to sustaining human potential. We'd like for you to think about this program in those terms in this era, as a way to look carefully at what can happen when these kinds of initiatives are nurtured and expanded to provide new chances to support those who have been experiencing direct inequity and discrimination. Last month, in October, was the Jewish observance of Yom Kippur. And I was privileged to hear a sermon by a young rabbi from Central Synagogue in New York City, who very nicely framed the significance of our actions in this period. And I want to share the core of his message along with our thoughts about the significance of supporting institutions of justice. The rabbi pointed out that the theologian Walter Brueggemann would call this a season of disorientation, a time when we experience what feels like dismantling of a known comfortable world, a period when we're forced to relinquish our safe and reliable confidence in our surrounding, and that evokes anger and rage and fear and despair. And Brueggemann looks at Psalms and other parts of scripture that express this. And for the young rabbi who spoke on Yom Kippur, it feels like it could be the end of an age of American Jewish security and confidence. And he expressed that very eloquently. For many of the changes underway, it feels like it could be the end of an age of thriving liberal democracy, the system that's kept not only Jewish communities safe in America, but opened doors for many, many, many others who were disenfranchised. Rights for people of color, women's rights, rights of people with disabilities, LGBTQ rights that we fought for are all being weakened and feel undermined. And seismic shifts are being felt in American society. But Brueggemann also pointed out that our biblical texts and our spiritual tradition focus on very different kind of message also, a different kind of psalm and scripture, what he calls psalms of new orientation. These psalms in scripture assert that from a place of disorientation, we can change. They tell us that we can make a shift in our thinking that will give us the fortitude to face this new world that's so threatening to us, but we must decide that we can change it. And he pointed out that these psalms of new orientation come from a mindset of unreasonable hope. We might call that faith, beyond the faith of assurance beyond rational reason. But such a psalm of new orientation is Psalm 126, which conveys those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who plant seeds in tears will reap a harvest in joy. But the truth of the matter is, those who sow in tears do not always themselves reap in joy. The person who is planting, the person who is harvesting are often different people, separated by generations sometimes. The psalm is meant to teach us that one generation plants seeds in tears and a later generation reaps the harvest in joy. Psalm 126 was written after the destruction of the ancient temple. That is the paradigmatic moment of Jewish disorientation, when the anchor of people's lives was desecrated and destroyed. And when God's chosen people were cast into exile. And we have psalms of disorientation from this period, psalms of the ancestors shouting and crying out to God and at God. But the psalmist knew full well that this wasn't the end of the story. He was not going to eat the fruit of his labor, but he trusted that he did his part planting, and his planting and his tears would water the seeds of a dream that would become a reality that some later generation would enjoy. This is the outlook that we encourage us all to take in these dark periods when so much is changing. It was the orientation of his generation, and that the harvest seasons, there are harvest seasons like there are planting seasons, and we need to move into a different mindset. Legal scholar Sherrilyn Ifill, who is the cousin of Gwen Ifill, the journalist that many of us know, has also pointed out that most of us alive are children of the harvest. And what she means is that we grew up during decades of thriving, admittedly flawed, but functioning democratic systems and expanding rights that were open to more and more Americans. We've been inheritors of that great decade of American history, the greatest decades of American history. And we've been those who truly reap in joy. Now we need to change our mentality to look to the future. We feel that have a sense that the harvest is ending, that we are staring down a barren field for the first time in a long time. And to face this reality, we need a new mentality, a planting mentality. We're going to need to be ready to plant seeds that we won't see grow to maturity. But that's easier said than done, because we have a notion, and our catchphrases of the day are, you reap what you sow, or I should see the results of my labor. We seek quick fixes in the short term, A harvest mindset is fine as long as we're happy with the status quo, but it primes us to fail when we hope to change society. Generations of suffragists, for example, never got to cast their votes. Generations of Zionists never saw the founding of the state of Israel. Moses and his generation didn't see the promised land. To become effective, we need to recalibrate the time scale we're thinking about and working in. So how might we think differently if we were imagining solutions for a generation to come? Well, that's what we are required to do. Once we shift, our timeline will naturally shift. The nature of our work shifts, our perspective. We will see successes, but they will look different. Our goals are countercultural. A young rabbi in New York pointed out that it's no small task to ensure Jewish flourishing in a period of rabid anti-Semitism, and it's no small task to shore up democracy as authoritarianism raises its head. So what we need most is to build the infrastructure of change, and that's what we focus on today. Infrastructure that's going to outlast us. And that's the kind of attitude and sentiment with which we've approached this project and other work that we do, and the places we look for hope, that we grasp this unreasonable hope and move forward. And that has, as spiritual work, it also has a healing effect, a restorative effect. Sherrilyn Ifill, to quote again, has been looking back at these planting periods in American history. She says that we have reaped the benefit, but we have it in us to do the planting? We can be founders and incubators of new ideas that translate into a new reality. And she wanted us to see, a lot of her work is to see what our ancestors did give us in America, to bequeath us such a vibrant harvest for so many decades. And what she discovered and what she delves into is how our forebears built groups and chapters all over America, how they were small, they started small scale and deliberately connected and built an infrastructure that survives. So you've heard the phrase, put your money where your mouth is. And here at planting time, this rabbi used a different phrase. He said, put your time where anxiety is. No one will do it for us. And he points out it can't be outsourced. But each and every one of us has planting to do. The task in front of us at times feels impossible. The world brings new headlines every day that makes us want to cry. And crying is an appropriate response when these things are happening. But we plant even as we cry. Let the decisions we make now with care and intentionality signal to future generations that we all planted in tears, and the yield of our hard work was years of peace and plenty for them and for this democracy that has been so important to us and in which our efforts have thrived. So I'm happy to set that up as our way of approaching the kinds of small scale initiatives and direct addressing of inequities that will bear fruit in a much more integrated future. And when we have that in mind, it allows us to have a discussion about this program, but also other ways that we invest our time and other ways that we address the challenges before us. I'll hand off to Elizabeth.
As we've talked through a lot of this, I can't speak for Bonnie, but I will say my own perspective has become more joyful and calmer, because I think, this speaks to me that what we're doing now really matters for the future, but it also speaks to me in that as we celebrate our 70th anniversary, what the people who came before us have done for us has been extraordinary. And we do, as Bonnie was saying, we do bear the fruit of that, but we don't always look at it that way. And the generation, really and truly, this is a church that came right out of World War II. It wouldn't be what it is if the people who built this church hadn't gone through what they went through. And they built an extraordinary institution and they built it on faith and they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of love doing it. And a lot of us have worked to sustain it over the years, but we've also taken it for granted. And as we've worked on this, that you'll see as we go through this, that the projects that we're offering this year are the same projects that we've offered in recent years and identical to last year's, but with a different take. When you look at it through a different lens, you see the impact of what you're doing a little bit differently. And I really found joy in that, and I think you'll see what we're talking about as we go through this. Would you put up the slideshow just for a minute, please, so I can just see it? I just want to be sure I don't lose track of anything here. So I'm going to just start out with talking for a minute about the summer mission trips. Those haven't always been part of alternative giving, but we've added them over the years. And what really struck me this year was the importance of what happens on these trips between the generations. Our young people build friendships with our older generations build friendships with the younger ones, and learn to appreciate things about each other and learn about each other, but learn about each other in ways that can really influence the future. And it's the future in general, but it's also the future of this church and of how we respect each other, how we love each other, what we accomplish together, and how these kids are the seeds of seeing that grow into something for the future. And when you step back and you look at it over time, it's really fun to watch. I came to this church in 1964, so I've been around a while. But it's been really a pleasure to see the generations come through, and the parents, the grandparents are mostly gone. But those young people are often still here and doing great things and starting to have kids of their own. So there's a lot to say for that. But so as you think about, say you want to support the summer mission trip, look at it with that lens, that it's not what they're doing on that particular day. They're doing meaningful work and they're building relationships with people who need help when they're doing different work tasks. That's extremely meaningful. But they're doing something that it's all about this faith in the unseen and what they're building for the future and how we've all played a role in that over time. And this is just one little way that you can play a role in that as we go through these projects. You'll see what we're talking about. Could you just scroll up a bit so I can see the order of, I don't want to leave anything out of the actual slides.
Okay, so this is showing on this.
Right.
Go to projects.
Because we're not going to try to explain every slide. The context of the slideshow at this point is it will be available online in 2 weeks. It's not allowed to go live yet because we're not really in Advent, but this is our opportunity to be explaining it. So you'll see it in greater detail then, but there are touch points that matter. When you're in this particular slide, you see a number of people from the church out at the first big protest this year out there together, which is just a nice touch point. But again, that was a point of anger and frustration and not knowing what to do. But slowly, as we've worked together this year, we start to see ways that we are making a difference. And that's phenomenal. I mean, it doesn't solve all our problems, don't get me wrong.
behind me? No.
You may need to reshare again, or
I will be sharing.
something got reset.
Okay. There we go.
Well, I'll jump in with,
So this explains to people who haven't participated before, and we're assuming that many of them will be watching this recording later. But you can, we have decided to add in a little bit about the history of the church, which will be in addition to what you're looking at today, but it explains what this is about.
a wider circle, many of you are familiar with. We have had different peripheral relationships with them over the years. We keep them in alternative giving as a way of maintaining a connection with them, but also of helping people understand that they're a great community resource. They've done a lot for refugee families, a lot for other families in need, and served as a place that has been able to accept a lot of donations of goods as people in the church have downsized and the like, but they are also always in need of financial donations, so we didn't want to leave them out of the loop.
And it says here, besides the basic essentials, which people donate during their downsizing or when they are changing out items and deciding that they have that they want to give specific gifts, they find things that are on sale, they are a bit finding things that are available. There's also the preparation for workforce. There's connection with health programs and long-term support, which really bring people to be self-sufficient. So this is a pretty fulsome package of programs. Elizabeth has mentioned the summer mission trip.
Yeah, we can move on.
Already, one of our big intergenerational opportunities. And even for those of us who don't go, the reports back on the summer mission trip are always a highlight in summer worship, because we see the excitement of the participants. This year, we're continuing to support Uganda. Uganda project grew out of initiatives in this church from our members, Edith Mafabi, June Chakobe, Joy Panagidis. Particularly, I went with Joy in 2003 to set this up. And our partnership is with the community association there. We've helped to build up Village Health Teams program, which was on the books in Kampala, but not fleshed out in any part of the country at the time that we picked it up and began to nurture it. And now we've got in that area, the community has 84 volunteers in their Village Health Teams program. And this year, the challenge is to encourage the acceptance and the access to a malaria vaccine. So they're calling people together and overcoming a lot of the resistance that we have experienced in this country to vaccine. We have sent bed nets before. We have sent programs that help with reducing the storage, standing water and the latrines and whatever. But this one is a challenge that June has said that is the preferred focus for this year. So this will be supporting, helping with vaccine coverage and prevention of malaria.
We specifically wanted to mention that because a lot of us felt the loss. Any of you who, I know a lot of people in this church who are really hurt by the changes in USAID and so many other programs, both personally and on a global scale, but this is a really, the Uganda project has always been an example of how having meaningful relationships with the community, and again, based on that mutual respect, makes a real difference, because this is a sustained effort that goes on without the presence of any US government effort. It's self-sustaining in their own community. They've built volunteerism. And now with the vaccines that we pulled away from, and many of which were just plain trashed, a program like that can continue because there's a structure there to support it. So don't lose sight of things like that. A lot of little things are still coming together to happen, not on the scale as of before, but there are other ways of doing things than just everything that counted on federal government support.
We shouldn't pass mentioning Uganda without just drawing attention to the fact that the Women's Microfinancing Initiative is still thriving there and expanded. There are literally tens of thousands of participants there. They have an extremely good record. It was built on these kinds of initial relationships and then carried into helping women to support the communities. And some of them are actually involved in healthcare provision. So it's a nice integration, and Robin Neidert has been an incredible leader with June and Edith and others in sustaining that and keeping it, as Elizabeth said, locally supported.
You see up on the slide now, the Feeding Families program. That is in partnership with Faith Presbyterian Church, which is located right on the edge of Anacostia and near Prince George's County. It's an older population in the church now, and they have been really kind about welcoming our partnership and welcoming our young people, welcoming our help can help them continue really important programs in the community. And at this particular time, I was speaking with one of the elders from Faith, and she was saying how many members of that community are the folks who work behind the scenes for the government agencies, and not necessarily for the government. So they're not getting paid, period. I mean, they're not waiting for a paycheck. They're waiting for things to reopen because they don't even have their contractors in many cases. They're the people who keep the cafeterias going, people who perhaps drive the buses or keep the cars running for the people who commute into the city. It's that kind of population that we really, really count on, but they become largely invisible. And they are lining up for groceries, which it's sort of takes your breath away of what's happening on a local scale and on a much larger scale. But these people are a part of our lives. We just haven't had a relationship with them. We are developing a much more meaningful relationship, not just with Faith, but with that community. And you'll see and hear today in church, because they're about our angel gift tree. For the first time, one of the groups that's included is Patterson Elementary, which is the neighboring school for Faith. So some of the same families that get groceries will receive holiday gifts this year. And the meaning of that, that's not just meaningful for the kids. It's meaningful for our kids. It's meaningful for us as individuals, but it's meaningful for the parents who will have this great burden eased because they'll be able to see their kids get gifts. At the same time that there may be familiar faces because we're out there on the corner of Faith's property handing out groceries. And our youth and other members of the church are there and helping them sort the bags and get everything ready, and out there face to face with the community providing food. So this one's close to my heart, but don't just let it slide away. It's something really important, and I think these folks should not be forgotten.
Often people ask, in this situation where people's food benefits are being withdrawn or where people's paychecks are being withdrawn, what can I do? How can we help to feed people? This is a well-vetted, well-partnered program, which could absorb as much funding as we can provide. It's expandable into very a wide reach in the community. When we talk about planting seeds, this program started, a New Story Leadership program that we still support, started about 18 years ago, with an initiative that began in Ireland and then was taken to South Africa, looking at people from opposing positions coming together in dialogue. And this was then taken to Israel Palestine, and these young people have come for many years. And now a big alumni group has been developed with Palestinians and Israelis talking to each other and coming to respect each other, telling a new story. And now their new story is a Phoenix Plan, which has been distributed widely and is part of a grassroots level discussion about rebuilding. So this is, we know the enormous challenges faced, but we have had this hand in and been involved with the struggles that they've had and the connections that they've had. So this funds that are given here are given to support the whole institutional connection that they have built up over time. And that's an example of what we've been focusing on with building institutions of justice.
And some of you have participated and been present when the young people from NSL come and give out their annual, they've been doing an annual report of sorts when they're here in the summer in Covenant Hall. And it's a jointly sponsored program with BJC. It's very moving, very striking how brilliant these young minds are. It's been difficult the last few years because they have normally there's a new group of young people every year. They have not been able to do that during this time of war because it's been so dangerous to travel. But the alumni have been able to come together sometimes in other parts of the world, sometimes here. So that it's a safer atmosphere, but we're not able to host anything this summer, which was really a shame. But we've had a lot of connections with this group of young people. There are people who've hosted them in their homes for the summer, any number of things. But in the last few years, they have all had internships when the program was flowing smoothly, internships on Capitol Hill, which has been a real learning experience from both sides. So again, it's a meaningful relationship. It's a real investment, not just in the now, but in the future.
We invited them to our gathering, to our Covenant Hall as a component of our participating in the program so that they could see our work together here in America. And they have all shown up for that and been very much inspired by that. And as Elizabeth said, the kind of experiences they've had in DC continue, and some of them are still in touch with the staff from legislative offices and Congress people that they worked with in the past, giving an on-the-ground report of what they are aware of.
Al-Ali Hospital in Gaza. This is another one that it has meaning on many, many levels. It's one of the last signs of an active Christian institution in Gaza. There was once a substantial Christian population, and that has greatly diminished, but this is part of the Episcopalian Archdiocese and their work in the Middle East. And it's a hospital that for many, many years has welcomed all. They haven't cared if you're Palestinian, they haven't cared if you're Israeli, they haven't cared if you're visiting from other part of the world. If you need help, they will take care of you. It's also a place that has been known as kind of a Garden of Eden in Gaza, as a place where people could come for calmness and respite, and sometimes meals. Unfortunately, it also became a bombing target during this war. It's been targeted a couple times, and they've had to evacuate with patients even in the operating rooms. But they continue. And part of the philosophy is they want people to know that Christianity and what it stands for is here no matter what. We're not going to run away. We may not be there in great numbers in churches, but you are still welcome. And if you need kindness, you need healthcare, you need whatever, get that welcome when you walk into Ali Arab Hospital. They have been very resilient. They have moved a lot of their work into mobile vans. They've gone out into neighborhoods where you could still find people who need help because much of the area has been decimated. But even during all of this, while this has been happening, they've been doing things like offering training on the latest kinds of laser surgery. They've been maintaining a breast cancer clinic for women. They have a special service for older residents that need care. So it's always, it's had this sense of hope about it. And they don't intend to go away. They keep at it. And you can play a role in that. And many of you have supported them financially. And I hope that you will continue to do that because they really are this beacon of hope. But what I really also appreciate about them in the context of what we've been working on in the recent months leading up to this is that this is about the future too. It's not just about what's happening now. They're not going to run away. They're going to be there. And that's pretty rare these days. It's not government funded. It's funded on, the generosity of Christians from many places, other people giving money too. But it's well worth paying attention to.
I think we need to go quickly. One thing we forgot to say at the very beginning, if people have questions, we're happy to have you interrupt and not have to save your questions to the end. We'll go through. You can take this one,
I'll take this one quickly. This is the Asia Pacific American Legal Resource Center. We mainly chose it and have supported them now for a few years because it's a very under-resourced population in terms of having advocacy for rights, for especially when there are Asians from different parts of the world who don't have English skills and they land in parts of Washington and need help in terms of being discriminated against, whether it's in jobs or in housing or in other ways. And this APA-LRC has been very effective and been very present for that population. And again, it's another one worth paying attention to for now and the future.
And we all are much more aware now of the need for legal support for immigrants. And this provides for specifically Asians who had not been reached. When we talked earlier, we talked about intentional targeting or focus on groups that are challenged with integrating in society, being supported, and having their full rights highlighted. And the Gen Out Chorus is a joyful opportunity to support LGBTQAI+, which includes allied youth who sing with them. This chorus has been supported by the Gay Chorus of Washington. And our funds help them with transportation, help them with singing lessons, give them an opportunity to bond and spend time together. They performed here on October 12th. Many of you may have heard them. It was a wonderful opportunity to mix with them. And then they came in and many of them helped in the Memorial Hall with our Smart Sacks and our program for
Disaster kits.
This is a program that I brought. We've been 19 years supporting this program. And this is an example of seeds of change. The women's program, women's education in Ethiopia is really challenged. And girls are often pulled out of school, even when they've shown great promise, and brought back to help with labor in the household or be assigned to an early marriage when the family cannot support their full set of children. So many of those who are brought into the Resources for Enriching African Lives program are girls who had been in school and shown promise and were then taken out of school and brought back with support of mentors, with community support and with tutoring that is, and security that has kept them in school. And now we have some of the youngest ones that we actually were assigned to support, who stood in front of the trees last year when they first joined with their sign of who they were. Some of them have become medical doctors now and are serving. You know, we have really been able to see the progress and success of what's a really very creative program. We have supported a mentor, we've supported individual girls. This girl highlighted this year took the college admission test and it was the highest scoring female in the country. And she was admitted to the University of Science and Technology. So we just we have good support for this program, and it really has made a difference in this the thriving of these girls from the western part of the country.
The CASA program is, there is a connection to this congregation in that there's at least 2 members of the congregation who are court-appointed special advocates. It consists of, it's basically an advocacy program for foster kids. It's more relevant than ever. It's always been relevant, but it's more relevant than ever because you've got all these kids right now who are in danger of falling into the foster care system where they might not have been a few months back, partly because of food insecurity, parents just not being able to support them, but also because parents are getting deported and kids left behind. We don't know the numbers of how many have fallen into foster care because of that, because the system's that's not clear, and I don't know how well it's being tracked right now. But the women in this church who act as the advocates talk about how meaningful this work is. And there is nobody who is more marginalized than a foster child. And there's a lot of different categories and a lot of different reasons that kids land there, but they work with the justice system and are brought in to be the source of communications with the judges to help them understand what's really needed and make sure that the kids get what they need to either move out of the foster care system or to get the services that they actually need.
And it's an invitation to volunteer. A $250 gift will support the training of a volunteer. And then get somebody in there and assist in the kids. In 2004, when the tsunami hit Asia, we looked and said, we don't have a program in Asia from this church with so many people who have connections to that continent. And we established a connection with Foreman Christian College because the grandfather of 2 of our members had started Foreman Christian College in Lahore. It was India then, it's Pakistan now. And the PCUSA was in the process at that time of taking back the administration of the college. It had been nationalized. And it is a challenge now that we have continued to support to bring women in equal numbers of Christian and Muslim women to get tuition, scholarship, experience there. 2 of our members taught there, and we have seen several women come through, particularly in the sciences, have come through the program, graduated, and moved into a completely different place in society and in preparation for raising their families than they had before. It's a co-ed institution. The women have particular special housing. And it's been a gem from our alternative giving. We have good support for this, and there's an unlimited amount of scholarship funding that could be applied. I mean, there's no limit here. $2,800 tuition. Sometimes we have members who give the full tuition and track the progress of the girls that they're supporting. And they do give us some very good feedback, and we hear from the girls who are beneficiaries of this program. So it is it's really a solid example of seed sown, and, you know, fortunately, in these cases, we're seeing harvest in our own time.
Presbyterian disaster assistance, the way we primarily support that is through disaster kits. So any donations that we accept through, alternative giving go to the creation of the disaster. Basically at a work day that took place very recently in October, tends to be a once a year event. It is a process that has been badly affected by the changes in the current administration. Because it is done in partnership with other groups, but a lot of the funding that supports things like warehousing of supplies and things like that was through federal government grants and the like. So a lot of things, the program is still alive, it's still there, but it's being tweaked. The Church of the Brethren has taken on a lot of the warehousing rather than having it be up in Westminster. It's still there in Westminster, Maryland, where our kids went through the end of this year, and then it moves to some other physical locations. So we're gonna have to be adaptable and have volunteers who are willing to take things a little bit farther. So the work will be a little more challenging, but the need for ongoing disaster assistance is super clear. We all know that disasters are not stopping.
No. Fires, floods, earthquakes.
You name it.
And it doesn't matter what income bracket you're in when that hits, you still need hygiene kits, you know. All the combs and toothbrushes and deodorant that you had before is gone. And PCUSA shows up with this PDA program and is really on the spot, usually. So this support is needing to supplement what the program's been getting from grants.
One little thing, which is not such a little thing, but one thing that has changed in this program is that the PCUSA is no longer in a position to send kids overseas because there's no process for that right now. So we're still supporting disasters overseas, but it's all through grants with sister organizations rather than with the actual kits, but they're still being used throughout the US for disasters.
Friends Club is a ministry at Bradley Hills and receives some scholarships for men who are struggling with early stages of Alzheimer's. They meet in this room. They have lunch and entertainment and conversation, and the caregivers are eternally grateful for the time that they're able to get things done at home while their loved ones are happy and well cared for.
Queerly Gathered it's just been part of alternative giving for a few years because it hasn't been in existence very long. It was started by Matt Nappinger and another church leader, Callie Bronkema, I believe is her name, from another Presbyterian church in the area. It is a PCUSA program. It's endorsed through our presbytery. Its focus is on true welcome for everybody involved in the LGBTQ community who has not felt loved or welcomed in a church. Even churches that say they welcome are not very good at welcome. And what you say and how you act are different things. They actually have expanded their own programming now that they offer training. They go into churches and help you understand what it is that may be falling through the cracks at your own church for how welcome is or is not happening. They also do training on things like how all the modern modern terminology of he, she, her, they, how that really works, because there's a whole lot of us that get confused. And yet it's a sign of disrespect to not use those terms correctly. But they understand that, and they're trying to help those of us who need help with that. But really and truly, they just want a relationship with Jesus Christ. And they're setting it up so that can happen, and they're making sure that they have their own gatherings, they have their own activities, but they're building relationships with churches and trying to communicate and educate as they go. Very successful program. Matt is not so heavily involved in it now because he has his own church now in Bowie. But he was definitely at the forefront of this. And the kids who are involved in it, it's not just kids, but the young people, it's been very helpful to them. And they were helpful to us, and that with the action forum this year, one of the groups that we voted to send some extra funds to was on the topic of suicide prevention for LGBTQ. And they worked with us to help us find a good local group to receive some of our funding. So there could be some solid advocacy in that regard. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you could, we have, I love this one, this is called My Dorm Room. Everybody who ever went to college probably had a dorm room. And at different stages, we all remembered, especially the women, that we were decorating our dorm rooms, and now that's a big thing. And some of the men did it too. I don't want to leave you out, but what happens now is that if you are a first generation student coming in from a minority family, and you are really on a shoestring, and your family has no college experience, you don't know what you're supposed to do. You don't have the money, and you don't have the experience, and you don't know what you need. And yet it's such an important part of college life, and it's your spot where you're going to succeed, you're going to make friends, you're going to study, you're going to prepare for your own future. And this was started by a woman who is out of Chevy Chase, and it's gotten some nice local write-ups. It's the numbers are growing. They did 7. I'm trying to remember how many kids it was this spring. But they basically have a list of items that are pre-approved, and the kids can, the newly arriving students before they get to school can go online and pick out what they need. And these items will be waiting for them when they get to college. So they don't feel left out. They don't feel like the oddball, and they're really prepared. They have what they need at hand, and they don't have to put time and energy into that. They said it's been an enormous help for the parents as well as for the kids.
Kids First is in Mexico, orthopedic surgery that's done in 1 week with a whole team of surgeons, nurses, PT people, caregivers, and they have evaluated. They've had 25 surgical missions, and we have there are some pictures. Sometimes people thought they were too graphic of the twisted limbs that are corrected and the feet that are fixed, and kids walking and, showing enormous joy in the families, having their lives changed by the surgeries that are done here. And this is brought to us by Mila Williams, who's friend at Duke. Billy Andrews runs the program, and it's been a great success. And one of their kids was our poster child a few years ago, adorable kid with a lollipop in his mouth. This year, we added Bradley Hills Nursery School to our scholarships, their scholarships to our program. We had supported Friends Club. We support this particularly with the need to bring in diversity to this nursery school to support those who are needing, and military families who are traveling and who need support, who have applied for tuition assistance. There's a scholarship program available, and these funds go directly into that, and everybody benefits. And we close with the general fund. We do you can go online and look at who have not received quite as many dollars. Or just direct where you would like to have this go or how you'd like to have it directed. The slideshow shows how you give and encourages you to give in honor of those, not just a straight out gift, you can give in honor of teachers, healthcare workers, loved ones, and we create every year a downloadable reading card that you can give along with to let people know about the program. But
I'm gonna stop you for 1 second because this is one opportunity where you can really reach out. Many of you have a next generation in your own families and they want to give you something for Christmas and you don't really want anything. Please share alternative giving with them. Because this is a way of planting seeds. It is a way of helping them understand what it is that's meaningful in the future and what's meaningful for you and what the whole concept of that there's what you can do now will affect what is growing in the future. There's a lot of young people who are feeling with a little lost too and a bit hopeless. And this is an opportunity to talk and show them that there are different ways of taking action. And that this is one of those, but it's an opportunity for you to do that on a personal basis with your family members, with people you know, you love, and just talk about it. Look at it with them, tell them why it matters, and see if you can help that spark get a little bit lit up. We were talking a few times about how we're not seeing a lot of young people out protesting. They have not experienced times in their lives of the kids in our own families mostly have not experienced times in their lives where they have felt out of balance in terms of what the country is doing. And they don't necessarily understand where they fit and what their role can be. But if you're talking to them about it, you're adding meaning to your own relationship and perhaps planting a seed for the future.
This will be part of Giving Tuesday, so that's another way you could fit it. There'll be a Giving Tuesday slide on our congregational expressions. You can send that to as many family members or friends as you like, and they'll come in right to this program and have the opportunity to participate.
Yeah, so much to cover, and thank you both for describing all the work you've done and the opportunities that we have. We probably have 2 minutes left, so if there are any questions that we can fit into that slot, we could entertain them now. Anything on the chat?
No.
Okay, I'll ask one question. So much need, so many opportunities to help in the world. The two of you have done an amazing job of winnowing it down to a certain number. How do you do that? How do you decide which ones to select out of the, many charitable organizations in the world?
A couple of things. One is each one of these has a direct contact with somebody in the congregation. So people in the congregation bring these. And we try to give a broad, maybe too broad, but most people say, where's the one that we took out last year? We want to give to that. So it is something we also look for, this issue of fixing or addressing inequities.
Mm-hmm.
And in having it broadly representative. But we do have very direct connections with each of these.
Right.
And somebody in the church has stepped forward to be the connection.
Stop sharing so that I can see.
I will stop sharing.
So I just want to thank you both for what you've done here, not just in opening up these opportunities for us, but also in giving some context and background and rationale of why we would do this. It sometimes seems sort of easy just to write a check for something, but when you think about it, as both of you have explored and shared, I think it means all that much more. So thanks to both of them. And before we close, I will remind you that Next week, we will not meet, in that it's, Interfaith Sunday, other things going on. In 2 weeks, this should be interesting. Ed Phillips is a hypnotist and he will come in and help us learn some techniques to help deal with the social anxiety, maybe of the holiday season, and reduce the intensity of fear, tension, and anger. I know I could use that, and I assume others could. All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. Now that we're all chatting.
Thanks so much.
It was really good. There was